Welcome to the RiVeR Project podcast series. I'm delighted to be joined today by Ann Larkin, who is the Services Manager of Women's Aid Dundalk, Gráinne Smyth, who is the Child and Youth Support Services Coordinator, and Amina Moyo, who is the Refuge and Support Services Team Lead. So thank you so much for joining me today. Really looking forward to our conversation about Women's Aid Dundalk. So starting with an understanding of Women's Aid Dundalk and the services, I might come to you, Anne, to ask you to tell us a little bit about Women's Aid Dundalk.
Okay. Well, Women's Aid Dundalk, first of all, Lisa, thanks very much for this opportunity to make the services, the support and the service, make people aware of it and let them know we're here and what we do. So we really appreciate this initiative. So Women's Aid Dundalk began in 1994, and it began with a group of 7 local women who were concerned about the level of domestic violence and abuse in women and children's own homes. So like happens at community and grassroots level, they got together and said, we need to do something. So they began to explore, and statutory services were approached and came alongside them, and Women's Aid Dundalk was formed. It began as a part-time helpline manned by volunteers, and then in 1997 the Refuge opened. At that time the Refuge was a communal facility and it could accommodate 5 women, 5 families, with shared living, kitchen, bathroom and dining facilities. So it moved on then, and the organisation today probably employs up to 55 people across a broad range of services, which you will hear as we go through this podcast. We're a 24-hour service, 365 a year. We have a number of different teams now within the organisation, which just goes to prove the expansion. I would say every strand of the service that we have in operation today is the result of a need that was identified by women and children when they came to us. So just a very brief example would be, we started out with a part-time helpline. That gave way to the recognition of a need for a safe place for the women to be when home became too dangerous. And then out of that, the women identified a broad range of supports and services that were needed, which we'll probably talk a little bit more about later on. So every service has been developed to meet an identified need from women and children impacted by domestic abuse and coercive control.
That's brilliant, Anne, thanks. It gives great insight into the organic growth of this organisation, very responsive and continues to be responsive to the needs. You'd mentioned there about how the service has broadened over the years in response. I'm delighted that Amina and Gráinne are also here to speak about the developments within their own departments. Some of which were not in existence in the very beginning. I'm thinking particularly, Gráinne, around children and young people. So I might come to you first, and maybe you could give us a little insight into the work with children and young people.
Okay, so as you mentioned there a wee while ago, I'm the coordinator over the children and the youth support services, so I am. And we offer a wide range of support networks for young people. We offer support work for children and young people from the age of 6 right up to the age of 18. So this is a piece of work that's carried out around their feelings and their emotions on their experiences. We also offer play therapy, which is for children from the age of 3 up to the age of around 12. Sometimes they can work with them if they're just a little bit over 12, but normally children from 12 onwards would get the support work. They would feel that they're too old for the play therapy piece. We are now also offering a piece of therapy for families, which is called Side by Side. So this is an exclusive piece of work which has been designed by ourselves, Women's Aid in Dundalk, and it's to be carried out specifically for mums and their children, but it can also be carried out with grandmothers and foster care mums where there are children in their care, where there is no attachment between them, or maybe where their relationship has been fractured. So this piece of work will help facilitate in the repairing of this attachment between them. We also offer life story work, which is specifically catered for children within the care system itself. We also deliver a Parenting Through Trauma program, which is an 8-week parenting program for mums who have experienced domestic abuse at some stage in their life, whether it's current or whether it's been historical. And they're trying to parent through that. So it's really just to help support the mum and help her to understand the effects and the impacts of domestic abuse on themselves and their children. We deliver a program to primary school children. They're normally from the ages of 4th class right up to 6th class, so from in around 10 years of age right up to 12. And this program is really to bring awareness around the hurting and the fighting in the home, and just around the importance as well to let the young people know, you know, it's very important to have somebody in your life that you can talk to about this, and not to hold it into themselves, really, and just to make sure, you know, that they do have someone in their life that they can go to, whether it's in school or at home.
Oh, that's wonderful, Gráinne. That's a great suite of
Yeah.
and a great variety of supports there for children and young people.
Yeah.
I'm particularly struck there by your work in towards the healing of the mother-child relationship, because I mean that's really well evidenced in the research that attack of that relationship is such a common experience that not many people, I don't think, would necessarily understand or know.
No.
And then of course the impact of trauma and how people carry that. You know, isn't it wonderful to be here and thinking and talking about supports for children and young people when it's only in the last couple of decades that's really taken off. Like in the early days of, I'm going to say, the movement of service provision, there wouldn't have been, I think the sense was really that if you were taking care of the mums, well then everything else would follow. Whereas I think we now understand more that children have their own journey and their own needs.
Absolutely.
Oh, but that's wonderful, and I think it's great that you're sharing that with the listeners, because and you'd said at the very beginning there, isn't it great to have this opportunity to talk about specialist domestic violence services, because not everybody knows what you do.
No,
I do because I've had the privilege of working with you, but not everybody does. So this is great. Thank you, Gráinne. Might shift now over to you, Amina. Amina, you're working as Refuge and Support Services team lead. So can you tell us a little bit more about those particular aspects of Women's Aid Dundalk?
Okay, thanks for having me. Once again, my name is Amina Moyo. So we offer support for women and children who have experienced DV, or who have experienced or having fleeing DV. So some of the support we have offer 24 hours helpline. We provide emotional support, information, and follow on referral, advocacy and accompaniment in relation to their experience of DV or coercive control. What I mean by that is that we advocate on the service user behalf. Say, for example, they need housing and things like that. So we also offer one-to-one support. We provide emotional support, information, and follow on referral as well. So advocacy and accompaniment face-to-face with trained members of staff. So that's when they come in for support around issues, some of them like their rights, what they're entitled to, and how they're going to go about their legal. Maybe they're looking for order to maybe try protection order or something legal as well. So we do that. And we also crisis accommodation, provide safe accommodation that will give them breathing space. We offer respite. When women come in, they assign a key worker who help assess their needs. So in the needs of maybe health, maybe they need a medical card, or trying to detach their medical card from the abuser. Sometimes women come in and they're not going back, so we try to advocate on their behalf, and also their payments as well. Sometimes they come in, they're attached to their abusers' payments, so we try to support them through social welfare, advocate on their behalf doing that. And we make appropriate referral. If they have children under the age of 18, we do refer to TUSLED as a child protection concern. And another thing we do is outreach. So the likes of the Carlingford ID, we have staff members that go there to kind of awareness to see where they can go if there's need for them, because it's not everybody that knows where to go, especially the outskirts. And we have training awareness as well. We have we train the likes of that. We have collaboration training with them to inform them of women's need when they come to them. And also we have supported housing that's transitioned from the refuge to the housing. We have staff member support service worker that works with the women that are already in refuge, and we move them on. We have few houses out there that we use as a supported housing for them, women that have issues with their legal. So this supported housing, the staff member that support these women in reaching their full potential. So we also provide service in the court. We have our dates, we have calendars, and staff members go there with collaborate with the clerk to support the women in making appropriate statements and support them in making statements. So we support them in completing their statements. So they come in, they don't know which of the order. So our staff member, their role is to support them in making sure they get the right order in place, and with the collaboration of the court clerk. So this is also done. This is part of what we do there as well. There's also Playroom Project. This is where we have often range of service for children and young people, including community creche, preschool and after school programs, youth development, and therapeutic support. So e.g. she mentioned play therapy, where children have one-to-one support, Safe Hands, National School, and Respect Secondary School as well.
Brilliant. I mean, that's a wide variety. And I think that may be surprising to many of the listeners, because, you know, I know that we sometimes encounter people that they just think refuge and they associate a specialist DV service with refuge. Whereas it's great to be able to talk about it because it's so much more, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like even some of the things you'd mentioned there around like supported housing, outreach, those more innovative kind of responses to really lean in to people rather than expect them to show up. So I mean that's a wide breadth there. When you're thinking about, and you've touched on this a little bit, but when you're, maybe for all of you, when you're thinking about those that you work with, the journey can be very different, can't it, for each? Is there, maybe could you talk us through some of those journeys, what that might look like? Like, will I just throw one at you? No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, if we were to talk about the varying journey of victims and survivors through domestic abuse and coercive control, through the services. As I said, our services developed from that initial recognition of a need to do something. We began with the part-time helpline. So today, just as an example, a woman's journey through our services could begin with, it could be a silent call that could be made in the dead of night, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, when women sometimes have time to think. The kids are in bed, or if they're a woman on their own, that might be when she's questioning, you know, because unfortunately the nature of domestic abuse and coercive control is that the perpetrator just locks down her mind and keeps her mind so busy that she can't think. So that could be the beginning of her journey. It could very well be a silent call in the middle of the night. But that call will be answered. So she may not speak, but there will be someone on the end of the phone that answers the phone, and she can if she wants to speak. She may progress on then, and eventually she may speak to the worker, or she may make, you know, that initial conversation. She may make an appointment to drop in and see us and have a one-to-one conversation. And in that conversation, she's listened to. And this may be, a woman will come in, she will be full of doubt. uncertainty. She may be saying, you know, very apologetic, and I don't want to be wasting your time, but I just, you know, do you think this is abuse? Yeah. And what often happens is once the woman begins to speak, her mind clarifies, and we're like a sounding board. So we listen. She doesn't get judgment, she doesn't get direction. She's not told, oh, you need to get out of that, because that's not helpful to her. She's the best judge of her situation. So in the conversation she has, clarity begins to take shape for her, and she herself will come with her answers and her next steps. We just provide and facilitate the space. But what we're finding more and more is the biggest resource that we have for women to offer them is information. Because with the nature of abuse, it's so closed. They are kept, as I said, so busy. They're being told the way the world is, and that's not the truth. They're being told that nobody will believe them. They're being told that they will lose their children. They're being told it's all their fault. They're being told they're no good. When they come here, all of that is clarified, and they begin to see, I'm not a bad mom. It's not my fault. It's not okay for me to be abused. But it's in the women actually voicing their experience that they realise that this is the way it is, and that it shouldn't be, and that it can change. So she'll have travelled through maybe the helpline, maybe a one-to-one drop-in with us. And it may be that she's identified that her home situation may not be safe for her, so she needs somewhere safe to go. And then all going well, if there's a space available and it's deemed to be safe enough for her and her particular needs at that time, she'll be offered refuge space. And in the refuge space then, we've had women say to us, that's the first time I've slept, and she doesn't know how long, because it's that sense of safety and security and peace. The situation in the real world hasn't changed, but there's that sense of it'll be okay. So that's the refuge provision. While they're in refuge, as Amina has mentioned, the key worker is assigned, and we identify, you know, her next steps. We develop a support plan with the woman. She identifies her immediate needs, and we work with her. We provide advocacy where it's needed, but we work very much, this is around empowering the women, because remember, by the time they've come to us, the control has taken away so much of their confidence, their decision-making ability. They've had their whole identity diminished and controlled. So when they have the bit of time here in the service, we encourage and support all that to be claimed back. So we encourage women to do as much as they can for themselves, and if needs be, we'll stand alongside them as they begin their journey. So that's refuge. And in terms then, as we talk about that, Amina referenced, you know, maybe having to go and obtain a medical card for themselves and their children, you know, independent of the perpetrator, or maybe their payments and things. But we would be saying to just need to reference the profile of the groups who use domestic violence services. This issue is not confined to any one socio-economical group, not any race, culture, creed, or anything, any profession. It's the most indiscriminate crime that there is. And for us, because we're a women's organisation, the only common factor is that we're females being abused by males in an intimate setting. So we would work with women across, as I said, the whole range. We've had women in here from 18 up is when we would work with women in their own right. Under 18, it's the children's services. Mm-hmm. But from 18, I think we had a woman in her 80s there recently. So it covers the whole spectrum, the whole life cycle. Professional women, nurses, solicitors, teachers, social workers. This issue is not confined to any of the, you know, sometimes, and again, because it's not talked about enough in its, you know, in what it really is. Society can think it's confined to a certain group or cohort of people. But it's not. Women's Aid Dundalk has from its beginnings and continues to work with women from all walks of life. So there we go. You've gone from the initial call through to Refuge and all that being in Refuge can offer in terms of support, information and all of that. And then it may come that the woman decides she needs to pursue the legal protection that's available to her, thankfully, under Irish law. So we can work with her, as Amina has said, around identifying what is the appropriate order that she would be eligible for. And we can assist her, we can accompany her to court, there is a court support worker present on family law days in the courthouse. So there's a friendly face, someone who understands and can hear what her experience is and understand it without having to probe or clarify. Can assist her to navigate the paperwork and even just to tell her the layout of the courtroom, because it's an intimidating place.
Sure.
That service, we find we've a lot of referrals in there from An Garda Síochána who work very well with us, and I have to say the relationship over the years has been very supportive. But for a lot of the women who are referred by the guards, this might be their first contact with the service. And sadly to say, even in this day and age, 2025, and even though the issue is so prevalent, too many don't know that we're there. So for women, and they come through court, it's their first experience. The guards may have said, you need to go down to the courthouse. There's a women's aid worker down there. Go and have the chat. So for that woman, that could be where she has her initial one-to-one. And then the hope is she's informed then of all the other services that's available to her for ongoing support. And that's the journey through the legal bit for her. She may well decide to go back home, and that's her choice and her decision. And unfortunately, it takes a lot before a woman is able to leave. A lot of that's to do with her, how she has been worn down by control, how she has been deceived. But also a big part is when the woman begins this journey, the perpetrator will up the ante, and he will give her a glimpse of the man that she fell in love with. He will keep hope alive for her in that way. So she will go back. She'll go back because she loves him, because he's telling her all the things that made her fall in love with him at the beginning. And then if there's children involved, she'll go back because the children want to be with their dad, because of all the other things. And then she'll also go back because the kids miss home, the routine, all of that. And this is where the specialist domestic violence services understand, and that's why I'm saying people who don't know the issue or don't understand it, with the best will in the world, they may say to the woman, you need to get out of there, you need to leave. But they have invested so much in this relationship. They've invested their life. And because of the abuse and the control, they may even have lost family relationships and support networks. So it's an extremely complex arena for a woman to be navigating. And that's why a specialist domestic violence support worker comes into their own, because they understand that complexity. They understand the to-ing and fro-ing in the journey, like it's not a straight line. You made your decision with the helpline call. This is the path you're going to take. You will begin the journey and you'll go back. And it may improve for a little while, and great if it does. But they will always know that Women's Aid Dundalk is at the end of the phone, should they need them. So that's then Refuge, court, the leaving, the going back. Follow on out of Refuge. It may be that if we have a transitional house or a supported house available, a woman may spend time here with us and be lucky enough then to be allocated a period of time within the transitional housing, which gives them time then to rebuild their life skills that have been stolen from them through the abuse and the control. So women begin a lot of the time from scratch, and what our role changes then, where we're in a support capacity to encourage, to empower, to build up, to stretch our world and help her to reach the full potential, her and her children. So that's transitional or supported housing. And then hopefully they will then, after the period of 18 months, they will find their own accommodation, be it in the current climate through HAP properties, and eventually their time on the waiting list will come up. For a lot of women, you know, as I said to you, we work with women who are professional women who, once they have that stable period where they can actually then see the light at the end of the tunnel, understand and believe again in themselves that they can actually live independently and be a positive contributor to society, they will have work and all of that, so they can begin a journey that may be different to some of the women. So, but it opens up the world for them. So that's transitional houses into their own, hopefully forever home. And within all of that journey, there's all of the barriers, the to and fro, as I mentioned. There can well be the engagement with social work. And a lot of the women have a fear around social work involvement because they've been told they're going to lose their children, because they've been told it's their fault. And there's an expectation for the women to keep their children safe. And that's, you know, Women's Aid Dundalk would be saying the narrative has to change there. We need to be looking more toward the addressing the perpetrator's behaviour and not questioning the mum's ability and capacity and understanding what has, you know, what she has had to survive and what she's actually been able to do in surviving and navigating this area. So there's all of that, and as I said, it's not a straight line through the service. You go this way and you might have your one-to-one and you might go home and chew it all over for 6 months, or it may escalate, or something may happen with the children in school and attention starts to come on the home. And that again is when Women's Aid Dundalk comes into its own. The woman can lift the phone and can talk about the issue, and we can help her identify her options and help her understand that there are other agencies and services out there who will be there to support, not necessarily to condemn. So that's the journey, roughly, very roughly and briefly, through the services of what Women's Aid Dundalk can offer. And so it goes on.
Oh, that's great, Anne. And I'm really struck by the non-linear journey of it and how it can be so different. And, you know, again, I know I keep saying it's really important to share that information, but giving people a sense of where you're coming from as a specialist domestic violence service, that you're coming from an empowerment practice, that in effect you're practicing in a way that's opposite to what the abuser is saying to them and doing. But you'd also mentioned there, and the three of you have mentioned at different points, different agencies. So I'm just going to throw it out there. Is working with different agencies in this situation important in any way?
Yeah, it's important. The likes of the guard, like she mentioned, we work with interagency, we have a good relationship with the guards. Mm-hmm. So we do training with the guards to inform them of the dynamic and impact of DV on women and children, coercive control. So that's why they're well informed and they make appropriate referral. So most cases you see in court is referred by the guards. Yeah, so yeah, from that understanding of DV, they were able to make appropriate referral and understand where the women are coming from. And also we have the likes of the homeless as well. The homeless service, the housing. We have a good relationship with the housing authority as well. Referring, they understand where we're coming from. I know they have training with the managers to inform them of the impact of DV. So when we make appropriate referral, they are aware where they're coming from, and the support is great with the women. And I'll just throw it to Anne, and if I miss anything, you can just help me to do.
There's just things are developing. Excuse me. Things have moved on so much since Women's Aid Dundalk came into being. In recent years, there's been so much coverage, and even in the legislation that has been developed, the protection that's in there now for women and children, the recognition of coercive control as a criminal offence. So much has happened. It's a different landscape to what it was when we began. And in that too, we're getting requests from agencies. Like a couple of weeks ago, Cara, our Refuge and Support Services Coordinator, she was invited down to Social Welfare Office to talk with the CWOs and the staff there, to talk to them about the issue of domestic abuse and coercive control and how that might impact women as they present to these services that are, hopefully in a position to help meet the needs that the women have identified. So there's requests coming to us to engage with different services around information and training on the issue. So there's a lot there, So I suppose maybe hand you over to you, Gráinne, around the bodies and agencies that you'd work with.
Yeah, the Children and Youth Support Services would link very closely with TUSLA. So we would get a lot of our referrals in from TUSLA in relation to child protection and support there for the children. So it's very important that TUSLA have an understanding of the type of work that we can provide, but also that they also realise the importance of the background information and the knowledge that we need to get as an organisation, so that we know what supports to put in place for not only the children but the family as well, because a lot of the time we not only work with the children, we would also support their guardians or the carers who they're living with as well, to make sure that they get the full support that they need, really. So it is. We also work very closely with family support as well. Like that, if a family support worker was involved with the family, just to ensure that that family is getting the benefits that they're needing, and I think that's it, really. Isn't it, with family support?
Yeah, well, there's the SIPSI and
SIPSI, yeah, we attend all the different meetings and stuff, yeah. So we're actually involved as well with the CFSN, which is it's a network of services that we get together every quarter, and basically bring awareness as to what their services provide and what's out there, really, to support families. So we're involved with them. We also attend the SIPSI meetings. We're heavily involved with the Children and Youth projects through TUSLA as well, and a lot of their training that they would provide. And there's some pilot projects as well that are starting up to try and support families and children within the community. Like the partnership, ABC. Yes, we will be linked in with ABC as well, as in with the different programs and services that they offer, and that they can provide. And have I missed anyone?
Empower Kids.
Empower Kids, very important. Yes, we work along very closely with Empower Kids, Bernardo's. So we do. So we work with them through different projects that are designed for certain services each year. So this year we're working with Empower Kids through the courts. So it's where children will have their voices heard. So that's just kind of at the beginning stage at the moment. So there's a bit of work now to get involved with the children themselves, interviewing them and having a chat with them around what it is that they want the judges to hear in court, and what rights they make sure that they are aware of their rights, and that they know that their voices are very important, and that they can be empowered to speak up.
Oh, that's brilliant. And very heartening as well. Gráinne, particularly when we think about children's voices and how important they are to not just assessing the risk, but also what works well, and their own sense of mastery, their own sense of being in control. But it's wonderful to hear. But the Bernardo's work is really innovative.
It's fab.
I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. So I think it would be fair to say that other agencies are a core part of the work that you do, which is really understandable considering the different areas that this issue touches.
Yeah.
And where specialist domestic violence services do this all day, every day, other agencies aren't necessarily, it's not their whole brief.
Yeah.
And yet, like when you think about some of the ones you've mentioned there, the guards, child protection, you mentioned schools earlier, Gráinne, there's a huge pile of professionals out there that this is a big part of their work, either knowingly or unknowingly. But it's great that they have that resource in yourselves to be able to build capacity, because, and I think Anne, you had mentioned that, but you've really got to know your stuff to be able to respond in a way. You've got to see it.
Yeah, you got, and I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking, the RiVeR project, its very existence, where it began, 10 years ago, the first accredited training around domestic abuse in the country was established. And that came about as a collaborative piece of work. But the DV services were at the heart of that. So again, going back to the origins of Women's Aid Dundalk, the statutory agencies and bodies had to get alongside us to be able to establish a service. Likewise, back in 10 years ago, DkIT, became the mechanism, it became the place where all that learning and that effort and the blood, sweat and tears that went into it, but it developed something that was tangible and has trained a lot of people in those 10 years. And to see it come now to this stage where it's going out into the arena, into the sector, and getting all the reality of what's available out there and making that available via the podcasts, for example. But it's that collaborative piece that is so important. And I do believe as we go forward into the next few years, the pace of change in the response to this issue and the understanding around it and the awareness of it will be much faster than it has been in maybe the previous 10 years. And it's because of, I believe, Women's Aid Dundalk would always say, we don't actively, we don't go out fundraising as such. What we do is awareness raising and about explaining what domestic abuse, coercive control is, the complexity, how long it takes. Like, women don't find themselves in this situation overnight. It's not that they chose the wrong fella. It's that there was a deliberate attempt made to mould this woman, to take away her identity as an individual and mould her to be someone whose existence is solely to meet the needs of a perpetrator of abuse. So it takes time for women to even understand that. So it takes time to get out of that. So that's something that it's not a bad patch. And if you don't understand that complexity, you're not going to be able to safely advise or, talk to a woman about her situation.
Or you could be quite destructive.
Yes,
in
and
that
you could be putting
if you don't get it.
You could be putting her at further risk if you don't understand that it's the hold that is on her life. That her life is literally not her own in these situations. But the collaboration is, and just a very brief mention of that, out of the court project that was established, 2014, 2012? 2012, out of that, like, it's become a mainstream service now.
Yeah.
And other services are trying to replicate it. But out of that, we had, because of the relationship with the guards approached us and said, what about if we come down here once a month and hold a drop-in clinic here in plain clothes? The women can come in, have a chat with us, and this helps in the sense that they don't have to go up to the counter in the barracks and try and tell their story over the counter. So that collaboration, that relationship building, it's really, really important. And as we see that grow and develop, we will see a better response for women and children. So the collaboration piece is crucial. But we still have a good bit of work to do, but it's moving, and there's an openness now, I think, and a bit more understanding around the complexity. So I'd say girls will be busy for a while yet, but in a
imagine,
good way.
Yeah,
you know.
I would imagine so. And you're right about, I mean, this particular issue, I'm going to say, over the last few years has just, it's gathered huge attention.
Yeah.
In comparison with maybe other issues, I think people are beginning to really deeply appreciate the complexity of it, but also about how not one agency has all of the
Exactly.
solutions or answers, and how we are much better together.
Yes.
So you've also mentioned there quite a lot around education and training, across all of it, because that seems to be interweaved with everything that you're doing. Would that be fair to say? And Anne, you'd mentioned about DkIT, of which Women's Aid Dundalk was a big part.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's where the provision of education, accredited education and training, available to all professions, and I would say particularly those who are going to be front-facing for women and children impacted by this issue, is essential, and like Women's Aid Dundalk has benefited hugely from that, because our staff now are able, because prior to this, without that level 8 programme in DkIT, there was nowhere to take your training. So it was all in-house, it was all developed internally by the services. So to have the education available to professionals in their capacity as professionals, to be able then to better respond to the families who may need their services, it's a really good move forward. And I don't know, I'll just go way down another wee rabbit hole, and we're talking about the training and awareness and stuff. There's 2 examples I just want to give you about a solid outcome from the work that we do. One is, there was a young boy, Gráinne mentioned about the schools programmes. We also go into secondary schools and do a workshop with, from, is it 4th year up? TY up.
Yeah.
So it's a couple of hours of a workshop, and one night here at 10 o'clock, after 10 o'clock, the night worker got a phone call from a 15-year-old boy who saw something happen down the road, and he was concerned. But this young boy had, in recent times, he had been in the class when the programme was delivered from Women's Aid Dundalk. So he had some understanding. He saw the incident, he was concerned, and this 15-year-old boy phoned the night worker, phoned Women's Aid Dundalk to say, I saw this, I don't know what to do. That's all right, son, you can leave that with me. And the night worker phoned the guards who did a welfare check. So there's how working together can actually help. And that shows
communities there to
it's
respond.
About empowering people.
Yeah.
Like, for so long, we know we're only in existence because of community concern and involvement. People in a community wanting to do something. We need now to be harnessing that will in the community to see things change. So there's an example, and it's about empowering people. Like, it's particularly our young men and our young boys to be able to call out inappropriate behaviour and to feel okay in their own skin about not going down that road, because I personally believe that it goes against the grain with an awful lot of our young boys, the behaviour that's kind of encouraged by the crowd, by the peers and things like that, about the need to be looking tough, for want of a better word. So for me, it's really hard, and a young chap took it on of his own accord to do something. And if we all do something, it's going to be better. But he did it, he was faced, he knew where to go for starters. Like, he knew to phone Women's Aid Dundalk. So that's one. And then there's another one. We had an event in the museum just before Christmas, and there was a man in the audience. And the man asked a question around court and things. And unfortunately, his daughter had need to go to court and things like that. But how that man and his daughter even became aware of Women's Aid Dundalk was our support services. They provided an awareness session in the local library. We would do awareness raising in shopping centres, in the library, anywhere where the public will be. to raise awareness of our service. And this man saw the girls in the library, saw the information, and was able to say to his daughter, maybe we should call in here and see if they can help. So he supported his daughter to go through the court process. So there's very tangible outcomes to the work that we do that goes beyond maybe people's perception of Women's Aid Dundalk, and it's about refuge. It's about somewhere to go. And unfortunately, the traditional thing is it's for if you're beaten and stuff like that. There is so much more to it. It's not just physical abuse. And that again is being recognised now, thankfully. So it's not just about having to go somewhere to be safe. It's about a full range of services that can help you to begin your journey to safety and to, living the full life that you were meant to live.
And what you're describing there is so much more, as you say, than service provision. It's really about social change and influence that and mobilising communities and give people, giving people the opportunity, because there are, as we know, so many people that struggle with and maybe pause because they not entirely sure what to do and they don't want to make it worse and they don't, but that's the wonderful thing of a dynamic organisation, in being able to meet the service provision aspect, but also around influence and change and building new leaders and all of those things. Speaking of change, are there any plans afoot for Women's Aid Dundalk?
Women's Aid Dundalk has for a long time been on the journey. Women's Aid Dundalk's aim is to provide safe, secure and acceptable accommodation for women and children who are impacted by domestic abuse and coercive control, and to establish a network of support services for these women and their children. So, in keeping with that, COVID enforced a move away from communal refuge provision. Unfortunately for this time, it has reduced our capacity in terms of managing high needs and a low threshold. But please God, in 2027, we will be moving into a purpose-built refuge centre. It's not facility, it's not the right word to use. But we will be extending our capacity. We'll be able to supply or provide accommodation for 12 women families with their own door, their own kitchen, living room, dining room, their own space to be able to begin to breathe and to heal. And on site we will have we're very kind of scattered at the moment, so it'll bring a lot of our services together on site. And it will also mean that we will be, very well placed to be able to provide the kind of training, the community training, the awareness training that we're talking about. We'll be a centre, a domestic violence service provision centre, but also an information centre to the local community and to anyone who would need us. So there's great plans afoot. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we would see the day when there would be such an investment into the issue of domestic abuse and coercive control. But the refuge, it's well on the way now. We got the green light from the local authority a few weeks ago. Brilliant. So we're at stage 3 of the CAS application process. We've a bit to go, but all going well. June 27 is what's expected at the moment.
Oh,
so
that's wonderful.
There'll be a celebration that day. But I have to say, I can't talk about that without acknowledging that this began at community level. It took us 30 years and a bit, because we're not there yet. But we will, it's a done deal. It's going to happen now.
Yeah.
But that's what it took, 30 years to achieve that. But it's with expectation that the next number of years is going to be around that influence of social change and that societal change that will work towards eliminating the issue and making society safer for women and children, and by so doing safer for everybody. So we've a bit of work to do, but there's an awful lot of work happening, and it couldn't happen without that collaboration and that acceptance that it's not just us can make it happen, it's not just the housing that can make it happen, it's not just Tusla. We've all got to pull it together and work toward, eliminating domestic abuse and coercive control from our society. So yeah, there's good plans there. Yeah,
that's great.
Big
That's great.
there.
Because you can see, speaking to the three of you, like you have your own specialisms within a very specialist area. And you can see how that knits together and works together, working with women, working with children, separately together, working across accommodation, non-accommodation, working with agencies. So it's quite, I can imagine that the co-location of everybody together will only further enhance that.
Yes, it definitely will. Yeah, like it'll to have the child and youth support services on the same site as the women's support services, the support service itself. It'll be amazing what can be done there. We're looking forward to that very much. So, yeah,
very much.
Much so.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. I love the way you speak about it as a centre.
Yeah.
Because it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really bringing victim survivors to the centre. It's bringing the community to the centre. It's bringing all the professionals.
Yeah.
We look forward to that. So just going to shift gear into very practically now. So, I'm thinking about the people who are listening. I'm thinking about the professionals who work with this issue. I'm thinking about the wider, our wider world in which a huge amount of people are victim survivors of this and will be tuning into this. So should somebody need to contact your service, whether it's a referrer, a professional who wants to support somebody, or whether it's a victim survivor themselves, can I maybe go to each of you just to step that one out? Is that okay? I might, because I'm looking at you, Gráinne, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. So in terms of referring to your department within the organisation.
Yeah, so you can send myself an email, which is Gráinne@womensaid.dlk.net, or you can contact the helpline either, which you will find on the Women's Aid Dundalk website. We also have a different social media, which we have Facebook and Instagram, so you can have our details on either of those.
Oh, that's brilliant, Gráinne. So just a reminder for our listeners, Gráinne is the Child and Youth Support Services Coordinator, so that's a very specific part of the organisation. So thank you, Gráinne.
Thank you.
Amina, I come to you now.
Okay, you can reach us on our 24 hours helpline, which is 042 9333 244, or info@womensaid.dlk.net.
That's brilliant. So that when you speak with somebody at the far side of that phone or the email or whatever method you choose, that you can be navigated then through the various aspects of the service.
Yes.
That's brilliant. That's great. And so just generally, if somebody wanted to chat with somebody in Women's Aid Dundalk that was maybe just around a general maybe inquiry or wanting to know more about the organisation, what would...
Well, that would be like Women's Aid Dundalk, while we work with women and children impacted by domestic abuse and coercive control. We would also, we're there for family and friends as well, for anyone concerned about a family member or a friend. Sometimes it's the family can see a change in the woman, or the woman will not be aware of a withdrawal from her family, from her support network. But family and friends will see the woman change. So we can work with those people. We can give information and support to family and friends and help them try and understand the position that the woman is in, and help them to be more aware of the fact that she needs them as much as she ever needed them, and probably more, but even to help guide them in their response to her, not to be directive, not to force her to make a choice she's unable to make. So Women's Aid Dundalk will be able to talk with family and friends. And we're there for support for them as well, because it's extremely difficult to watch a loved one go through this. So we'd be there for family and friends. So how family and friends can reach us, they can use the helpline number that Amina has given out, but also by the website. You know, the full range of services is up on the website. Have a wee look at that. And again, they can drop us an email at the info@Women's Aid Dundalk, and they'll get a response. Somebody will get back to them. And there's no question too big or too small. Anyone that's concerned, whether it be family and friends, professionals. We've had calls from everything from local politicians, you know, that a woman has presented, and what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
We've had the whole range, you know, of inquiries. So we're there for women and children and for the wider community. So that would be it. The helpline, first port of call, the website, our email is up there, and there is the social media up on our website as well. So, and like that, we're available. We will go out and talk to groups. We will go into workplaces, and I would be saying, you know, I do expect, you know, far more demand now to be on domestic violence services, given that in Ireland now we have, there's domestic violence leave has become statutory leave. So, you know, I'm thinking that's fantastic. But if I'm a woman working in an organisation, you know, I'm going to have a level of comfort and confidence around approaching, be it the HR manager, be it my boss, to apply for that leave. So the organisation needs to be in a place where it can competently support the people applying for domestic violence leave. And that's only one example that I can see where there will be more need or more requests arising for support from domestic violence specialists. How do you support your employees when you don't know yourself the complexity of the issue? So there's lots of good stuff happening. And just I failed to mention, I'm sorry Lisa, I'm way down a rabbit hole here, but we failed to mention when we were talking that among the range of services we provide, we work with TUSLA in providing supervised access service for families. And again, it's the expertise that our staff have developed over the years of understanding the issue of domestic abuse and coercive control that helps them in a room with a family, with a mum who for whatever reason can't be with her children full time, but to help that mum and those kids have the best that they can have out of their time together. But also their expertise is, I believe, valued by TUSLA as well, because they kind of see the difference that having that knowledge, given that the vast majority of children and child protection referrals have its roots in domestic violence. So that's another service that has evolved out of an identified need. I believe it actually was a need first recognised in Refuge. Again, it's that specialism that has been developed over years and has very much been led by women and children. It's by listening to the women and children that we've been able to develop the services, but also then to be able to advocate for the women, because so much of it is about the women finding their own voice again. And until they do, we're just here to kind of just walk the road with them. And the same with children. It's great to see now that children in their own right are being regarded as, you know, the impact that it's had on them, you know. But yeah, that's the story.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, there's so many takeaways from this podcast, you know, and I think so many really critical points of clarity that, you know, just kind of walking in the world ordinarily, I kind of picked them up that people don't always understand the impact on children. They don't understand that there's dedicated supports for children. Sometimes people think Refuge is the entirety of a specialist DV service, and I'm going to add to that sometimes they don't realise just how dynamic Refuge is.
Yeah.
You're assigned a key worker, you're working on there's assessing needs, your support plan, there's accompaniment, there's advocacy, there's a whole lot of help and support that goes in there that people might necessarily understand. you support family and friends. People wouldn't necessarily understood that either. The critical role of professionals and the way in which you shape and support their practice, the way in which you work collaboratively with them. Not everybody's going to understand that. I'm only hazarding, I guess. I could be wrong. But there's a few really big takeaways there from your podcast. So thank you so much. Critically, you've also really importantly talked about this not being an issue that discriminates, and how, you know, anybody can experience this. And you've done so in a beautiful way to shine a light on the different types of support. So people are listening and that resonates with them in terms of being made feel the way they've been made feel, or even just if they're thinking themselves about what are my next steps. You know, it's a really good insight. So thank you so much for that today. I think this is going to be really supportive to many people. So before we wrap up, is there anything that you didn't get a chance to say that you'd like to know? And don't worry, because we can do another podcast on another topic if you like at any time. We'd be delighted, wouldn't we? But in the meantime, if there was anything you didn't get a chance to say.
I think you've covered everything.
Yeah, I think a lot's been covered. I know for myself, having seen the organisation grow and develop over the years, I just, you know, the ethos of the organisation of Women's Aid Dundalk, women who come to us, we're of the opinion that when women contact us, they're coming from a position of strength. They might not know it or feel it at the time. They generally feel as if the world is in turmoil. But Women's Aid Dundalk acknowledge the strength that it takes for them to recognise that something's not right here. They might know, they don't know necessarily what it is, but the courage and strength it takes to reach out is huge. And just to say to anyone who might be listening, if you're on the brink of making that contact, you won't regret it. Lift the phone, have a conversation. If you're worried about somebody, give them that, phone us or give them the helpline number. But just be aware that there is help and support out there and that it can get better.
That is a fantastic way to bring our podcast for today to a close. Thank you so much, Anne, Gráinne, Amina. All that's left for me to do is to thank our listeners for joining us today and encourage them to tune into the next podcast. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks very
Thanks,
much,
Lisa.
Lisa.
Thank you.